of literary study of a biblical narrative. I can't explain to you why he did it. It was an answer to German biblical studies. And usually, may I say it in 2 sentences, usually they would say that the Torah is teaching us to cheat. You know, Jews, they survive by cheating, you know. So Yaakov Avinu is cheating, not Avinu, Yaakov, the father of the Jews, is cheating his father, is cheating his brother, and he's not punished. Which means that we don't blame Yaakov, we blame the Torah. You understand? The problem is why the Torah doesn't say that it was ugly. So Buber lives in this environment, and he asks himself, really, why does not the Torah blame him? And then he found out that the Torah, the biblical stories, especially in the book of Genesis, choose to be written in indirect expression. In other words, instead of saying it's very ugly to cheat, the Torah says Yaakov was punished for his cheating by what happened to him with Lavan. And there is a symmetry between what he did and what happened to him. So if you know to read biblical stories, you see that the Torah is speaking, but in an indirect, so to speak, hidden way. So he discovered, Buber, that one of the hidden ways of biblical expression, narrative expression, is the guiding word. A guiding word means there are 2 kinds of it. He wrote a very famous article. He said there is an internal guiding word and there is an exterior guiding word. An internal guiding word is that the word is repeated in the same story in a very strong way, and you realize that this word is guiding you in understanding the inner meaning. And I tell you, the word Hineni appears 3 times in the story and is the backbone of the story. Without Buber, I would never understood what I will try to explain to you. But there are other guiding words. For instance, the word son, ben, is repeated 10 times in the story. The verb to see is very dominant in the story. So these are internal guiding words, milah mamchayim. But there are also exterior. And the exterior guiding words are very uncommon terms which appear in 2 stories and make a connection between the 2 stories by being nadirim, how do you say? Rare. By being so rare. So you read Lech Lecha, first time you don't know that it is a rare expression. After 10 chapters you arrive at the Akedah and you say, poor guys, they made Aliyah, what do you demand of them? Let them be peaceful in the land of Israel. There is an Aliyah after the Aliyah. He has to descend more. More is even demanded of him. He thought that he has arrived. And here God says, no. A religious person never arrives. A religious person is always on the march. Till your last day, to our last day. This is what it says. There's again a Lech Lecha. And then you open chapter 12 and you see Lech Lecha me'artzecha, mimolatecha, mibet avicha, el haaretz asher arecha. You have to go from your land, from your family, from your tribe, to an indefinite destination, to the land which will I show you. You know, there's a law in psychology which says that the way to a destination is much longer than the way back. Haven't you realized this? For sure. Why so? Because if the destination is indefinite, we are nervous. We come back, we know exactly the way back, but we don't know the way to the wedding in Cholon. Very unpleasant experience. You have to devote half an hour for Cholon to find out where this is, how do you say, hall? So you see in both stories, Abraham is not going to the land of his choice. He's going to the land of divine choice. Why do we live in Israel and not in Switzerland? Because God chose this place. There's no other answer. So we didn't choose it. Then you can say, we chose wrongly. No. It's Eretz HaBechira. It's the land of his choice. The same is here. Why is Yerushalayim a sanctified place? We chose it? David chose it? No. God chose it. To the place which I designate. And you have to go with this nervousness of an indefinite destiny. So we see that there is not only a guiding word which is connecting the two stories, they are eternally connected. You have to give up everything. When I speak with Olim Chadashim like yourself, I respect the greatest sacrifice is the sacrifice of language, of culture. You become strangers in a new country. So Abraham has to give up his property, his land, his connection, his family. Maybe this is the greatest separation. And now he's demanded to give up his son. And the two stories continue. They are structured in a parallel way. Then Abraham builds an altar in Eretz Israel, and here he builds an altar in Har HaMoriah. And at the end of the story, he is blessed with many children, and the end of our story is also blessed with many children. So Buber says, if the stories are so similar, we have to ask ourselves whether they are also different, and this is very important. Whenever we make comparisons, we have to ask what is similar and what is different. And he says, the first Lech Lecha is a rational one. You sacrifice the present and the past for the sake of the future. This is rational. You want to come to the land of Israel, you sever yourself from the past. From your friends, from your families, from the landscape. You sever yourself also from the present, for the sake of the future. Every student who goes to the university does a very rational thing. He sacrifices 4 years of the present for the sake of having a degree and a better life in the future. This is rational. So when Abraham is demanded in Lech Lecha to give up everything, this is rational. Because he wants to be a new beginning. If you want to be a father of a nation, you have to stop to be a son of the former nation. The cutting off is rational. So he gives up his parents, he gives up his brother, and in chapter 21, he gives up his firstborn child. All for the sake of Yitzchak, who is the future. But now he is demanded to give up the future, which is crazy. Outright crazy. What do I mean? It's irrational. And God made an oath to him, promised him in chapter 21, expel Ishmael, ki beYitzchak yikare lecha zara. For in Yitzchak you will have your seed, you will have your continuation. So he has a promise. And now God, how do you say, breaks this promise and says, no, I want also Yitzchak. So it's a very demanding story. It means that Abraham is demanded not only to give up his son, his only son whom he loves, he has to give up his understanding of God, his rationality. He has only one option open, or to obey or not to obey. This is where we stand now. And the next verse says, Vayashkem Avraham Baboker. What is so telling is that in the story of Sodom v'Amorah, when Abraham feels that God is doing injustice, he's crying out. And in this story, he's mute. I don't know whether I can answer this later, but it's very important to see that in the Bible, if you agree, you do. If you don't agree, you protest. So Abraham is doing, because he understands the greatness of the demand. And he does not believe that he has an argument. Even so that God has contradicted himself. And this is a very strong argument which he could have used. He prefers to be silent. Vayashkem Avraham baboker. And now I read verse 4 in Hebrew and then in English, and I don't have too much time. What is very interesting is that in Hebrew, verse 4 uses the terms and the nouns and the verbs of verse 3. In other words, in verse 3 there is a command. In verse 4 there is a fulfillment expressed in the words of the command, which says that he did exactly what he was commanded to do. So I read it in Hebrew. Vayashkem Avraham baboker, vayachavosh et chamoro, vayikach, God says kach, et shnei na'arav ito, v'et Yitzchak beno, vayivaka atzei ola, vayakom, vayelech, lech lecha, vayelech, el hamakom asher amar lo ha'elohim. You see that he's really, the fulfillment is stressed now in English. And Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took his two lads with him and Yitzchak his son, and he split wood for the offering and rose and went to the place that God had said to him. I believe that it is enough to stress that Abraham is a rich person. He could have split the wood by commanding a servant to do it. Whatever he can do himself, he does himself. See the old man splitting the wood, awaking his servants. Lastly, he awakens Yitzchak. He doesn't say a word to Sarah where they're going to, and they are going to the indefinite destination. My father, my late father, was a great feminist before this was so accepted, regarded me as responsible for biblical studies in our family. And from the days that I've been a student, but later that I've been a scholar, he would really be angry whenever we reach the Parshat HaShavua and says, where is Sarah in this story? How come Sarah is not mentioned, but she is not sacrificing her? And I would give him lengthy explanations that the Bible is focusing on the main hero. This is a very important rule of biblical narrative. And I would say, it's not that Sarah is not important, please don't take it personally. But the story is focused on Abraham. And he wouldn't take it. I believe that this is true. But if you want to appease my late father a little, you can say, why does he take these two servants? So the realistic answer is that in biblical time there was no central government, and it was very dangerous to move from one place to another, and nobody in the Bible moves alone. Even Bilam goes with two servants. It's unnoticed, but it says in half of the verse, he was with two servants. Shaul is going with two servants. This is how you go. But maybe that another meaning, and this is that he wants to camouflage the real purpose of his going in the eyes of Sarah and in the eyes of Yitzchak. And he doesn't tell them where they are going. They are going to make a sacrifice, a regular sacrifice. You will see that this will cause Abraham a lot of trouble, because he will have a problem how to get rid of these two servants. But now they are accompanying him. We arrived at verse 5. ביום השלישי, וישא אברהם את עיניו, וירא את המקום מרחוק, ויאמר אברהם אל נעריו, שבו